Senate Education Committee meeting. Committee, before we get started on our bill hearing, I do want us to talk about a piece of business, and that has to do with next Monday. So, committee chairs, as you know, by Wednesday morning, put in the schedule for the next week. We're always actually trying to work 2 weeks in advance so that folks can actually show up and testify. So we have scheduled for Monday that we're going to have the hearing on the budget for the School for the Deaf and the School for the Blind. Monday has been decided by leadership is pro forma. So most folks are not going to be here on Monday. We did talk with Corey, the Secretary for the Senate, and said we need to go ahead and have the meeting because we need to take action on the budget before the end of the week because I need to go and present that to Ways and Means by Friday. So the ask was, could we have our meeting virtually? Since we will not take action, but what we will be doing is hearing the explanation, asking questions, and also wanted to make sure that we had the interpreters available that are already scheduled. So Monday, we will have our hearing over the two budgets. We will make it available for everyone that wants to do it from a virtual standpoint. The interpreters will be here. Okay. And so just wanted to know we're going to continue to move forward. And what we don't know is what happens should the Chiefs win, should the parade be on Wednesday, if Wednesday is pro forma also. But guess what? We're going to get through the weekend first. We will hear about those two budgets. We will not take any action on Monday. So just wanted to make sure that we're clear on that. If you know before Monday or even on Monday, please make sure that Cindy knows whether you're going to be in person or virtual. Right now, the only other committee that I know for sure is meeting Monday is Judiciary. So that's where we are with that. So now let's go ahead and move to the bill hearing. And our hearing for today is on Senate Bill 407, requiring the State Board of Education to authorize teaching licenses for individuals who complete an alternative teacher certification program. So first, we've got an overview with our reviser, Tamara Lawrence.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good afternoon, committee. Senate Bill 407 would require the State Board of Education to authorize individuals who complete an alternative teacher certification program to apply for and obtain an initial teaching license. Any such individual who applies for an initial teaching license would be required to submit an official transcript to confirm the award of a bachelor's degree or higher, submit proof of completion of the alternative teacher certification program, submit an application for an initial license with the required fee, and complete all background check requirements. That individual would not be required to complete professional education pedagogy coursework at an accredited institution engaged in teacher preparation, nor would they be required to hold a valid teaching license in another state that was earned through completion of an alternative teacher certification program. An individual who obtains an initial teaching license based on completion of an alternative teacher certification program would be authorized to teach the subject area and education level that correspond to the certification they received. You can see those listed on page 1 of the bill starting in line 29. The State Board of Education would be required to treat that individual the same as any other individual who completes a traditional teacher preparation program, except that individual may be required to participate in school district teacher mentorship programs in the first year of their employment. The bill would also require the State Board of Education to adopt rules and regulations to carry out the provisions of the bill. And on page 2, starting in line 15, the bill does define alternative teacher certification program. Senate Bill 407 would take effect upon publication in the Kansas Register, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
So committee, what questions do you have for our revisor? I am not seeing any, so thank you very much. So we will start off with our proponent testimony in person, proponent testimony. Isabel Welsh, Director of Government Affairs, American Board for Certification of Teacher Excellence, Inc. Welcome to the committee.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Chairman and committee. Thank you for having me here today. As she said, my name is Isabel Welch, and I'm representing American Board in support of Senate Bill 407. So American Board was originally founded by the United States Department of Education in 2001, and the reason for its founding was to encourage local professionals to bring their real-life experience into the classroom. So for the past 20 years, American Board has been a national leader in alternative teacher certification. We've certified more than 17,000 teachers nationwide, and we currently operate in 14 states, including Nebraska, which we just added, and we're in the process of adding 2 more states to make it 16. So on average, the people who complete American Board's program are about 39 years old, so they're later in life than your traditional university graduates, and they usually fit into one of 4 categories. So we have career changers who were journalists and decided they wanted to go give back and teach English. You have military veterans and their spouses. American Board works with the National DoD Skill Bridge Program, which is a program to help with militaries transitioning to civilian life. They are substitute teachers and paraprofessionals who are already working in your classroom who are seeking full licensure, and they're stay-at-home parents who got their bachelor's degree, decided to stay home and raise their kids, and are looking to re-enter the workforce. So American Board's program is designed to help people become teachers quickly and affordably. So the program costs about $1,900, takes less than a year to complete depending on the subject area, and is really designed for people who don't have the time, the money, or the access to complete a traditional program. So in order to enroll in American Board's program, you have to already have a bachelor's degree from an accredited institution. It just wouldn't be in education. You also have to pass a background check. And the program itself consists of coursework covering subject area and pedagogy. So in order to complete the program, you have to pass an exam to prove your competency in your subject area and pedagogy. And it's important to note that half of the program is on pedagogy. And so candidates learn about classroom management, instructional design, assessment, teacher leadership, and all of the things that you would traditionally learn in a university-based course. In fact, according to several third-party studies, American Board's coursework and exams have been found comparable to university-based coursework and exams. For example, our pedagogy exam covers the INTASC standards, which are nationally recognized pedagogy standards, and our pedagogy exam has been found to be in alignment with the Praxis PLT, which is the Praxis Pedagogy exam. So additionally, a Drexel University study found that when asked about their American Board teachers, 97% of employing principals plan or have already retained them past the 3-year mark. So after observing American Board teachers in the classroom, seeing them interact with students, and seeing how they've impacted student growth, they planned or did retain those teachers past the 3-year mark, and the national average of teacher retention at the 3-year mark is about 80%. The study also found that American Board teachers were as strong or stronger than university-prepared teachers in 95% of surveyed areas. That includes classroom management, content knowledge, leadership, and collaboration. So really, the bottom line is that this bill is designed to allow alternative certification programs to operate in the state of Kansas and to provide an additional pathway for people to become teachers in the state. And we do recognize that Kansas has a self-executing state board of education, and really this is just to allow even more teachers to become present in the classroom for our students. So I do urge this committee to support this legislation and to help bring more quality educators to Kansas. And I will stand for questions at the appropriate time. Thank you.
Well, committee, we are at the appropriate time because our two other pieces of proponent testimony, Dave Dorsey, Senior Education Fellow for KPI, Kansas Policy Institute, and John Luth, Deputy State Director for Americans for Prosperity, Kansas. So committee, what questions do you have for Isabel? Senator Sykes.
Thank you for being here, Isabel. As I look at the bill, are there other certification programs other than the American Board of Certification that would also be allowed under this?
Yes, there are. And so the bill states that they have to operate in at least 5 states, be in operation for at least 10 years, and provide coursework and pedagogy and content. And so there are other organizations. I can get you those names after specifically, but I think that there's at least 2 or 3 who would fit the requirements of this bill.
Okay, yeah, if you can get that,
Absolutely.
I would appreciate that. And then my second question, Madam Chair, have you tried to have conversations with the State Board of Education without going through the legislature?
So we've actually been talking with the State Commissioner of Education, and we feel that, and this has been the case in other states where we have also been seeking approval, that right now in Kansas, the application process and the appeals process is really designed for programs that are not alternative-based. And so because of that, we're really trying to, or we're hoping that they'll be able to lay a pathway for programs like ours to apply and to become approved, because right now, the application process just doesn't fit the type of program that we operate under.
Okay, and one final, how many other states allow this?
14.
14, okay. I thought that was in your testimony, but thank you very much.
Of course.
Any other questions? Senator Petty and then Senator Erickson.
Thank you, and thanks for being here. I want to be to understand completely. So you have in the bill a list of certifications, and excuse me, and when you guys came into my office to talk to me earlier, I brought up about special education. And so, you know, currently in Kansas, I could get my undergraduate, but I'm not a special education teacher. If I want to be a special education teacher, I then have to, you know, get 30, at least it's 30 hours, I think, to be certified in special ed. So how would this, is the expectation that if Kansas, let's say, did adopt this legislation and someone went through the 18-month program, is that right? Yes. 18-month program, and their certification said that they were a special ed, their certification in this program was in special education. Is the expectation then that Kansas would have to then accept them as a special education teacher, even though that doesn't meet our qualifications in Kansas?
Thank you for your question. So the way American Board's program works in special education is that candidates are required to take 3 exams, which means it puts the program time at about 18 months instead of a year. They're required to take the pedagogy exam like everybody else. They also do coursework and take an exam on special education specifically. And then they also have to complete elementary education coursework so they get that foundational academic and developmental knowledge that's necessary. And so American Board right now has certified more than 1,500 teachers in special education. We're really proud of our special education program, and we understand that, you know, those are our most vulnerable students in schools, and that it's really important to provide them with quality teachers. Anecdotally, the people who participate in our special education program do tend to be people who have experience with special education students. So whether those are their own students, whether they worked as a therapist or as a nurse, things like that. But we've had a lot of success with our special education program. It does meet the federal requirements for special education programs for teachers. But we can certainly discuss the special education program and its requirements further, and I can provide you with more information.
Just as a follow-up, so whether it's special education or any other certification, that person, you're talking about the testing tool that your company has developed, not necessarily if it corresponds or matches any other state, any state.
Correct. So our, the exams that we provide for our candidates are proprietary, but they have been found to be in alignment with state-based exams, for example, the Praxis. And so I think that you'll find if, the coursework and the standards that we cover do align with the requirements in Kansas, but they would be given a certificate from us, so they would take our exams.
Thank you.
Senator Erickson.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for being here today. So if I understand the bill correctly, what your program does is all it does is say that someone who completes this alternative certification process is eligible to apply to the state for a license, correct? It doesn't grant them a teaching license in the state of Kansas. They would then have to go through the same process as anybody else. Is that correct?
Absolutely. That's absolutely correct. And I think that's an important thing to point out. So thank you for that. So this only asks that candidates who complete this type of program are treated the same as somebody who completed a traditional education preparation program, so that they are able to apply for a license through the state. And they do still have to meet all of the requirements for special or for professional development, to upgrade their license, renew their license, things like that. The only difference would be that the State Board of Education does have the option to require district mentorship during a candidate's first year in the classroom.
And I follow up, if I may, Madam Chair. So my other question is that, can you tell me, you said how many teachers have been licensed through this process in other states? So has there been any indication that those teachers who've gone through an alternative licensing program are less prepared? Have you seen that they need more assistance or have a greater a risk of dropping out of the profession, or aren't prepared or competent? I mean, have you seen any indication of that?
Sure. So as I think I mentioned in my testimony, but I can give you some more information on this and certainly follow up further. But Drexel University did a study of over 150 employing principals in 12 states, asking them about their American Board teachers. And they found that they have a 97% retention rate, and that they are 95% of the time strong or as strong or stronger than traditionally prepared teachers in things like classroom management, instructional design, assessment, teacher leadership, and collaboration.
Senator Dietrich.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So you may not know the answer to this, but I'm just curious. So on line 15, the applicant would apply for an initial teaching certificate. So I think in Kansas, that might be a 2-year certificate. Anybody know? Could somebody nod? Okay, yeah. So
I'm sorry, what did you say? It might be
an
a
initial certificate is a 2-year certificate, and then you get a standard certificate. So my question is, in the 14 states that have approved this alternative certification pathway, do you know the length of an initial certificate? Is it similar to ours, 2 years?
I do not have those specific numbers in my brain right now, but I can certainly follow up with you and give you those numbers. I would imagine that they're pretty similar, but each state does work differently. So I'll have to follow up with that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Senator Gossage.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for being here. Just a quick question. So can you give us an example of someone who maybe they have another field, they went into chemistry, then they would like to teach? And their options would be go back to college, get their education courses, right? Or go through a program like yours. Could you explain what that program might look like?
A program like ours?
Yes.
Absolutely. So we can take your example as somebody who has a degree in chemistry, for example. Maybe they decided to become a pharmacist or something in the chemistry field, and then they want to go back to become a teacher. So what they would do is they would enroll in our program, and they would be presented with coursework that covers their content area, so chemistry, and pedagogy. And so what we have found is that people who have a degree in chemistry and have work experience in chemistry can move through the chemistry material quickly and do not find it very difficult to show their mastery on that chemistry exam because they're already familiar with the material. But we do find that those candidates need more time and more effort and more interaction with the pedagogy coursework because they may not be as familiar with that. And so the great thing about our program is that it allows people to move through it at their own pace. And so if that same person, for example, decided to go back to university, they'd still have to go through chemistry classes and other classes in order to get that teaching degree. And so this really expedites that process for them.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Petty.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Two things. One, could you provide us with a copy of the survey that's mentioned from Drexel University?
Absolutely.
And then suddenly I forgot what the second thing was. I was going to ask you. I had to follow up with you, but with yours, but then it's, I'll ask later if I think of it. Thank you.
Okay, so now we'll go back to Senator Sykes.
Thank you. I just pulled up the information about American Board on my computer. So looking at this, so you have to hold a bachelor's degree. So a student could come out of like their college with that bachelor's degree and decide that, you know, this may be the avenue. And then you have to have college transcripts. Can you send us the information of what they have to have met before being eligible?
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you know it off the top of your hand, that's fine, but
Yeah, I can kind of
I'm very intrigued by this.
Yeah, I can kind of explain the process a little bit too. So to answer the first part of your question, it would be possible for candidates who come directly out of university to apply to this program. However, we do find that the average age is 40 years old, so that's not super common for us. But the way that it works is that a candidate would have to submit an official copy of their bachelor's degree or higher transcripts to our team. Our team would review them and confirm that they meet all of their requirements. You know, it's from an accredited university, and that they're actually completed their degree. And then once we have that, their transcripts would be approved. They would participate in the program, and then they'd also have to go through a background check process.
So could you share with us what's common in earning that education degree is the student teaching as well as classroom observation. So how is that augmented in this program?
Sure. So there's a couple of things. As I said earlier, our candidates tend to be a little bit older, so they have more life experience, they have more maturity that they are able to bring to the classroom, and we find that they're able to step into the classroom prepared to lead very well. After, through this Drexel University survey, we have found that their principals feel that our candidates don't need to participate in student teaching and that they're ready to enter the classroom after completing our program. I will say that this legislation in our program does not require anybody to hire American Board trained teachers, and if that hiring body does not feel that they're prepared, that's totally their prerogative. But we've found anecdotally that our teachers are ready to enter the classroom even though they don't participate in that student teaching experience. And additionally, if the State Board of Education felt that that was necessary, that would be something that they would be able to decide.
Committee, any other questions for our proponent testimony? Seeing none, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next up, we have opponent testimony. So first, we'll call Timothy Graham, Director of Government Relations and Legislature Affairs, Kansas National Education Association. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll repeat my name again, Tim Graham, KNEA. All right, so a few things here. You do have my testimony. I won't read it, but I will tell you what our concerns are. And they're basically here on the paper, and they're based in the subject of pedagogy, and then the framework of how that pedagogy is studied, and then the certification itself of the institutions that give that type of training. So it's all here in the testimony here, and so I'll read a little bit of what I'm talking about in a second. But before I tell you that, I do want everybody to understand that we do support alternative routes to certification. And we have spoken at length to those, to that issue and adopted resolutions in our representative assembly. And that representative assembly takes place every year. And this is a standing resolution. So if it's not repealed, it remains in our book of resolutions. And so we understand that there are several teachers in Kansas that have gone through different paths of certification. And we support that. And I'll read the actual resolution here. KNEA believes that alternative routes of licensure and certification should be available for persons already holding baccalaureate degrees in other fields. To receive a license or certificate, an alternative route candidate must achieve the same state standards in basic skills, subject matter knowledge, and pedagogy through the CAEP accredited institutions as those required by traditional candidates. And so I think probably the biggest problem we have with this bill is that the company or companies that would be allowed to offer that certification are not in the framework of the CAEP accreditation standards. And that gives us some concern. We do understand that the bill does require that these companies require pedagogy, and we do understand that the company that does this does require some sort of examination in pedagogy. But again, if those aren't under the frameworks of what we all see as the traditional route, that brings concern to us. And I'll tell you why. This isn't about us just getting up here and saying no, right? We really want to be part of innovative routes to bring more teachers to the profession, bring more people into the field of education. We understand there's a teacher shortage, and we're willing to work with partners in trying to tackle that problem. But if I had a nickel for every time that I was introduced to somebody and they said, "What do you do?" I probably wouldn't have to, for a living, I probably wouldn't have to be standing here today, right? And I'm sure all of you have heard the same thing. Our professions are, a lot of times, for a lot of us, it's what define us. And the training and the certification and the education that go in to obtaining, these professions, or to succeeding to get to these professions, it's very important to those folks to do it. It can be considered in a lot of ways almost sacred, And so if you think about in the times that we've been up here, I remember I'm old enough to be up here when the dental hygienist and the dental assistants were fighting over who should be able to scale above the gum lines, who should be able to clean above the gum lines. The assistants wanted to have that opportunity. The hygienist said, heck no, we're not going to do that. They were protecting that training and those certifications that they had by going to school all those years and saying, no, this is our job. This isn't somebody else's job. Ever ask a real estate agent about what they think about a for sale by owner sign? They say, heck no, that's ridiculous. This is our profession. We know how to do this. If you want to sell your house by yourself, go ahead, but you're going to fall into some problems. Ask a lawyer about a person who represents himself in court. It's the same thing with teachers. Teachers are very protective. They're very serious about the path that they took to get to these professions, particularly when we are facing a great deal of pressure in this building about being told that our public schools are not meeting the standards that they should be meeting. That's rhetoric coming out of this building. Those are conversations that we have every day up here. And so we're thinking, okay, at the same time that we're being told we're not doing a good enough job for our institutions to be accredited, you're asking us to support a bill that will allow people that are going to other non-accredited institutions to join our profession. And that's hard for our teachers to accept. It's not that we want to say no. Here's the deal. Does this bill meet our standards? In our testimony, we say it probably doesn't. But at the end of the day, I don't know, because we found out about this bill the way most people find out about this bill, by reading the calendar. We've got 40,000 teachers in Kansas. They have to go through a process of licensure. They have a lot of expectations on them. When they find out about this by reading the calendar, they are not comfortable. Don't do this to teachers. Have a conversation with us.
we might be able to get to yes. But ask us. That's all we're asking. Talk to us about this. Explain this bill to us in a way that we can be comfortable with this alternative route before we're asked to get up here and say this is okay. Thank you for your time.
Next up, we have Dina Horst, Liaison for the Kansas State Board of Education.
Chair Baumgartner. Chair Baumgartner and committee members, thank you for the opportunity to testify in opposition to Senate Bill 407. Our opposition is based in our belief that Senate Bill 407 is both unnecessary and derogatory to the constitutional authority granted the Kansas State Board of Education. The bill isn't necessary because there are already alternative pathways to licensure in Kansas. In fact, ABCTE, as we know them as, already has some teachers licensed in Kansas. I don't know whether they're actually teaching, but they have come through the other state licensure alternative routes. And if you want to know a little bit more about that, Shane Carter, the director of our licensure division at the department, is here, so he could answer more specifically some questions. But in the past few years, the state board on its own has approved several alternative pathways to becoming a licensed teacher in Kansas. And some of that is when you're from another state. We're looking at traditional and alternative ways that you might come to licensure in this state. Last year, but I want to talk about the bill also. Last year, the legislature supported these efforts by passing legislation to join the Interstate Teacher Mobility Compact. That legislation upheld the requirement that to receive a Kansas teaching license from an out-of-state program, one must first be approved by the state from which the applicant is seeking reciprocity. This bill removes that requirement, and it erases almost all oversight. If Senate Bill 407 becomes law, the state board will be forced to issue a professional license to anyone with a bachelor's degree who can pass a couple of tests. From looking at the website, it appears as that a person can teach a subject without holding a degree in the subject or a related area. And that is definitely a concern of ours. This legislature, in fact, many of you who sat around this table have joined us in saying we recognize the need to include structured literacy training for pre-service elementary school teachers. Senate Bill 407 prevents the state board from requiring such training before issuing a teaching license. To ensure preschool, I keep saying that, pre-service programs produce teachers who are well prepared. These programs are subject to accreditation by the state board. We know that states often do not have an elected state board of education and particularly one with self-executing powers. So those state legislators must make licensure decisions. However, Kansas does have such a body, which is constitutionally required to make such decisions. And I think you all know that that's the Kansas State Board of Education. To ensure the teacher quality expected by Kansans is preserved, alternative preparation providers must be approved by the state board so unintended consequences do not occur in the future. We take very seriously our constitutional responsibility to ensure that individuals who receive a Kansas teaching license meet Kansas expectations that teachers be of the highest quality and very well versed in the subject they teach. In the future, we respectfully ask that you please direct to the State Board of Education any entities requesting to offer teacher education programs in Kansas, because we wish to visit with them and find out if the program can be adjusted so it will fit what our expectations are. We believe it to be a dangerous precedent to have a bill that allows one provider to do an end run around the state board in order to do business here. Thank you for your consideration of our testimony, and I will stand for questions at the appropriate time.
Thank you. Next up, we have Jerry Henn, Assistant Executive Director, USA, Kansas and Kansas School Superintendents Association. Welcome back to committee, Jerry.
Thank you, Senator. I appreciate that. And I appreciate being in front of the Education Committee. And I think I need to right a wrong. And Senator Dietrich, I think it's 3 years. Shane, is that correct? It's 2. Okay. All right. Well, I apologize. You were right. You were right. Wonderful. Okay. 10 years ago. Oh. I've been out 6, so I apologize. Thank you for this opportunity. I appreciate it very much. Most everything that's in my testimony has been said. With the state board being the people that license our teachers, and we just believe that that's where that should be. You have given them that authority to do that. Let them go ahead and do that. That's their job. That's part of their job. And the good people at KSDE do a great job of giving those people those licenses that they need and that they deserve. A little bit of personal history with my time being an administrator in schools. I had these opportunities to go through this and have non-pedagogy people come to my buildings, either as a principal or as a superintendent. And I would tell you that they have been very successful. The KSDE, when they go through those licensures, those alternative licensures, they do a great job of weeding out the information that needs to be weeded out. And I have 100% trust in KSDE going through that process. I still believe it just needs to be in their hands and not in anybody else's hands. And so I'm very comfortable with that. Could I be comfortable with another group? Pretty much with what KNEA rep said. Yeah, I would like, but again, I need to be in the know. I need to see how that's going to work to be a part of that. The last thing I wanted to point out is that in talking with Mr. Carter at KSDE, he told me that there are 15 people currently in this process of what happened last year that the legislature approved. And so I'm very excited about that opportunity, that we have an opportunity to have 15 new people in the state of Kansas that came from out of Kansas. You enacted this bill or that law last year, excited about that opportunity to see where it's going to go. Let's give it a chance and let's see what's going to happen. I think we're going to see that that's going to be an important part of Kansas education, because people want to come to Kansas for our education and for our topics that we do and the things that we do and our educators that we have. I think it's a good opportunity for us. So that's really basically it. Everything else has been said. I'll stand for questions as appropriate.
Okay, committee, we have heard our 3 opponent in-person testimony. What questions do you have with any of the opponent? We'll start with Senator Gossage, and then we'll go to Senator Straub, and then we'll go to Senator Petty.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dina Horst, would you come up to the microphone, please? Thank you so much for being here. You mentioned that it's just one provider in this bill. I didn't read that in the bill. I read it to be alternative certificates.
We were told that it was ABCTE who was coming around and talking to all of you. So that's where we got the idea that it was one provider. I think it would fit multiple providers.
Thank you. And then you had mentioned that you said you know them, but you also mentioned that you would like to talk to them. You would like to talk to alternative options. I'm assuming then, have you spoken with them?
They have not come to us.
You're aware
They've
of them?
talked to the commissioner because that's the way that they've handled it in other states. But in Kansas, the state board makes those decisions, not the commissioner.
You also mentioned that we have ways for alternative, for people to come in. You mentioned reciprocity from other states. What about within Kansas?
Within the state, we have, I know, an alternative program for paras to become special ed teachers. I couldn't tell you what all of them are, but
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
like I said, if you want to know specifically, you could ask Mr. Carter.
All right. And then finally, I'm fully aware, as a health insurance agent, I help school districts with their health insurance. And I'm aware of a school district in a northern part of Kansas that tell me every year they have 5 or 6, very small school district, 5 or 6 of their teachers, they can't get teachers. So 5 of them are not licensed teachers.
And it's real possible none of these will go there either, but that's the reason we want to talk to them, because we want to make sure that they are going to meet the expectations we have for teachers. I have no issue with ABCTE, nor with alternative ways to become a teacher. In fact, I welcome it, but I want to make sure. I feel like it's my responsibility as a state board member to make sure that kids in Kansas have access to quality and teachers that know what they're talking about in the classroom.
Thank you. And my final comment, Madam Chair, is that, having been a classroom teacher myself, having had many student teachers, There are many who went through our normal process that by the time it came to me as a student teacher, it was very clear to me this person has no business being in the classroom. And we often will see, most of my student teachers were amazing, but there was one young man that I helped him become a cabinet maker because we both agreed this was not the right path for him. And he went on to become a great cabinet maker, but would not have been a great teacher. So they can go through the normal pathway, right, and not necessarily be a good teacher, but on an alternative program could potentially be. So I was following up with my final question about what Senator Erickson said about they may apply for a 2-year certificate, but they're just applying. This, my understanding, is not saying they have to be accepted. Is that right?
The way that our attorney reads the bill, if they certify them as having finished the program in a successful manner, and they've met all of the other things like having their background check be a clean background check, then we have no reason to say no. But we have no idea whether they're a good teacher or a poor one from a student-teacher point of view either.
Thank you.
And I've had that experience also as a teacher.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Dina.
Okay, we have Senator Straub, then Senator Petty, and Senator Erickson. Senator Straub.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Not sure who this question would be for, maybe someone from the Department of Education or the State Board of Education. I'll just use myself as an example. I have a Bachelor's of Science in Apparel and Textile Marketing and a minor in business. I'm 3 for 3 on teaching my own daughters how to read prior to kindergarten. What would it take for me to get an elementary teaching certificate? How long would it take? And how much would it cost?
Madam Chair, Shane Carter, Kansas State Department of Education, Director, Teacher Licensure. May I address?
Please, and let's not run out the clock. We have people that have questions, but let's go through it.
Yeah, short answer, a great program that would be available to you is the limited residency license or for elementary education. So it would take about 18 months, but they would allow you to qualify for a LERP license. You complete 6 hours in classroom management, and then you would receive the LERP license or the LEAP license, and then you'd be able to teach elementary and finish your pedagogical program. And all in all, it would take about 12 months to 18 months to finish the program. The cost, I don't have the exact cost for you, but it would be commensurate with a graduate level degree. So whatever that cost would be. Yep.
Sorry, Madam Chair. Per credit hour, it'd be graduate level per credit hour costs.
That is correct, yes, ma'am.
So most likely in excess of the $1,900 that was presented by the American Board.
It would probably be more than that, but you would have the opportunity to work in the profession while you're completing that training too.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I also have previously held a substitute teaching license and have many hours in the classroom. And does that count for anything?
No, not necessarily, but your experience could factor into other licensing options, not for elementary, but you have a business background that could factor into receiving a different certificate.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Senator Petty.
Jane, just stay there.
Ma'am.
Since the teacher compact legislation that was passed last year has been mentioned, so could you just expand, because everybody, okay, just expand on why it's now taken effect.
Yeah, so the main reason it's taken effect, we're waiting on 10 states to adopt the Teacher Mobility Compact. 11 have adopted that, so as soon as that 10th state joined, the Teacher Mobility Compact went in effect. So at that point, we could start issuing license based on that piece of legislation. And we have had individuals that have applied for licenses from Oklahoma and Nebraska that have qualified for licenses based on that compact.
And you may all recall that in order for that to happen, any any state had to pass the same legislation, that identical legislation that we passed, which was mentioned that they had to have a certification, a teaching certification in the state that they were moving from towards Kansas.
Yes, so it actually stated that they had to hold a bachelor's degree, an unencumbered license, and pass, those are the two main requirements for that particular license. So that unencumbered license is very important that that's mentioned as well.
Thank you. Senator Erickson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is for Dina, please. So we've talked a lot about pedagogy today, and so is it your position that the current licensing process in Kansas ensures competent pedagogy of the teachers we're putting in the classroom? The way we currently license teachers, are you saying that you're assured that they have the pedagogical?
Yes.
The current way we do it?
Well, and we do that through student teaching, et cetera. It's part of their transcript that's presented as well. But if they do come in from another state, that's an assumption that.
So, Madam Chair, I would just like to quickly read. This is dated September 30, 2023. And the headline is Kansas State Board of Education approved licensure changes. And it says that they removed the Principle of Learning and Teaching pedagogy exam as a requirement for licensure. In addition, students that have failed the exam twice are still issued a license. Are you aware of that?
Yeah,
I believe it's the elimination of that
I think
praxis
that
test.
that's something beyond my information. So I do know that have talked about allowing some people to get a license when they failed, but it's basically they're within a point or two. It's not,
Which I believe is a lower standard than
like
the group
major,
today.
major.
My final question, because I know we're short on time, Madam Chairs. You made the comment that that if we pass this, then there will be teachers in classrooms that do not hold a degree in the subject area they're teaching. Did I understand you correctly?
I want to make sure I'm hearing. I've got hearing aids, and I'm not
Yes.
real
Did you say you're concerned about this bill because it could allow teachers to be in a classroom without having a degree in the content area that they're teaching?
Correct.
So are you saying we don't have that currently in Kansas? That we don't have teachers who don't have a degree in the content area that they're teaching?
If they've come by an alternative route through that's possible.
No, I'm talking about not an alternative route, the route by which you currently license and certify teachers, that all of them have a degree in the content area they're teaching. Is that what you're saying?
Well, if they don't, they're on a waiver.
I don't believe that to be true because I know many, many, many teachers who have a degree in one area, take the praxis exam in another content area, and are licensed by the state of Kansas. Is that true?
Well, that's possible.
The same praxis level exam that we're talking about for the alternative certification.
It's not
Is that
the
true?
praxis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know we're short on time. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Tim, could you come on up, please?
Yeah, Madam Chair.
Thank you for being here. So share a little bit. Have you talked with any of your colleagues in Missouri or Nebraska or Oklahoma or Arkansas, so those states that surround us, that do have folks that have gone through the American Board program? Have you talked with them to find out what concerns they have, or if any of those
No.
graduates are members of
We haven't, because again, like I said earlier, we found out about this on Thursday. So, that the bill was going to be heard. So, I mean, absolutely. I've been making a lot of phone calls around trying to figure out if this is a good bill, if this is a bad bill, what the program entails, if this program would actually meet the standards of the resolution that I read to you. And without those in-depth conversations and with only, a few hours within our own team, we meet every Friday to talk about all the bills that are going to take place next week. And so in addition to this bill, we had several others. So we just haven't had the time to really dig into this. And that's why I make a very impassioned plea to not drop these things on us and let's have a conversation. And then at the end of the day, if we say no and you guys disagree with us, like you have so many times, then we accept it, right? So,
Well, okay. So I will simply say as chair, I think you know that process of the chair preparing the schedule for the next week and so forth. So I think the ire that seems to have come through with your testimony today is with me as the chair, because there was not something just dropped. It's not as if Monday or Tuesday or even yesterday we made a sudden adjustment to the schedule. It was scheduled last week, early in the week. It didn't get published. So did I contact you and say, hey, this is what we have queued up for next week? No, I did not. So, and I apologize for that if that is something that KNEA is wanting. I will try and do that in the future. This was not a gotcha. This bill was something that was introduced to the committee. I think we can look at the records as when it was brought to the committee. But as far as scheduling, we've had to do a lot of, I'll take that pronoun out and I'll say I have had to do a lot of scheduling adjustments with our committee assistants because of our snow days and our ice days. You already heard the start of the meeting today. We're having to make 1 or 2, possibly 3 adjustments for next week. So this is not a gotcha. Just so you know, that was not the intent. It is not to impugn. Okay, the bill was requested January 25th.
okay.
So it was just to try and get it in there. We have the hearings so that we hear concerns as well as support. We even heard that the organization met with the Commissioner of Education and thinking that was where to start, but we have a board member saying, should have never spoke to the Commissioner of Education, should have spoke to the board members. I guess I would like to hear some feedback at some point in time. Did the commissioner tell them, don't talk to me, talk to my board members? So you and I will have conversations on what's coming up in the future. Please know, this was not an insult on our teachers.
No, and please understand, I'm not directing ire towards really anybody in particular. This is a discussion about everything, right? This is a global discussion about us finding out about things behind the scenes. In a perfect world, and I understand things work fast up here, and I'm not unrealistic. I've been in this process. It's the only process I know. I've been up here I had dark hair when I started, right? So in a perfect world, I feel like when a bill of this magnitude is introduced and before a hearing takes place, I would love for us to be in a position where our legislative allies say, hey, have you talked to the representative of 22,000 teachers? Because I think they may have a little bit of heartburn about this. Now, I'm not blaming you for that by any means. I think there's plenty of blame to go around, and part of that could be ours. But I think that I think what you see in me is a frantic sense of frustration of having to deal with this issue and others. And this is an issue that has really got a lot of our members fired up because they feel like this is a watering down of the process that they have gone through. Now, again, I don't know if that's the case yet because we haven't been able to go into what the pedagogy training is that these companies provide. So it's just one of those things, I guess, Madam Chair, but I appreciate.
Well, part of what I look at is hearing from teachers the frustration that when they have plan period, they're having to sub because there's such a shortage of teachers. There's such a shortage of substitutes. I hear some ire from teachers that it's the custodian of the district that's teaching welding, not someone with a license. And the concern, I've even heard from teachers, the concern about the elimination of the praxis exam to earn a license. I remember sitting for the praxis. I remember that it was kind of that proof positive that I had learned, even though it was my third degree, if you will. But when we talk about watering down, I don't think it should just be put at the feet of legislature. But I will certainly work to make sure that as I'm building a schedule, you'll get a notification from the committee assistant if there's any changes or something to come in. Like I said, not intended to be an insult to our licensed teachers, but what we do know, because we heard this at the beginning of session, we have a shortage. We have a vacancy of about 1,800 positions. So at this point in time, do we need to look at some options? Yes. So the folks are here. I hope you guys, when we get on the floor, because we're late, we'll find an opportunity to talk to the folks that are here, talk to Isabel, and continue this conversation.
Thank you.
Committee, we are adjourned.